Let's kick off this morning in the center of it all, at least where the world is focused on, in Tehran. Danial Rahmat, senior energy security consultant based in Tehran, Iran. Daniel, I suppose just on a very general human level, what's the mood in Tehran like? Does this feel like something imminently bad is about to approach, or is there some optimism growing that maybe we can find an off ramp? Your thoughts at the moment?
Hello, Sean. Hello, everybody. Glad to be here again. Look, the problem at the moment in Iran is not limited to the possible upcoming war with Americans. You know, we had a very huge and unprecedented uprising here in terms of the numbers of people in the streets and the level of the crackdowns and the level of the death. There are many different statistics coming out. No one can confirm either of them, but a huge number of people were killed in the streets of Tehran and other cities. And the risk of an American invasion on Iran is very high. And due to such a big catastrophe Iran experienced in the crackdowns, the system has a crisis of legitimacy to mobilize the people to resist. So that would increase the risk of an American attack. At the same time, we are witnessing new problems. A huge number of Kurdish separatist guerrillas, most probably supported by American military, are heading towards Western Iranian borders, which would take them into Iranian territories in the case Americans launch a strike on Iran, and there is the possibility of preemptive attack from Iranian side on their positions to prevent them entering Iran before any American strike. So the situation is very complex. At the same time, Turkey has very significant concerns about the instability in Iran, which would cause to actually security risk on the Turkish borders as well. And Iranian-backed militias in Iraq are now threatening the Kurdistan region to step in if the Kurds attack Iranian territory. So you see, it's a big mess going on around. Pakistan and Afghanistan are hitting each other. Economic situation in Iran is getting worse and worse. Things are getting worsening. And there is a very high level of possibility that Iran would attack the oil assets of the Gulf countries in Saudi, in the UAE, to escalate the crisis in order to increase the cost of any attack on Iranian positions. So this is not going to be something like the 12-day war with Israel. This is going to be something, as the leader of Iran said, regional. The scale is going to be much higher. So the cost, I don't know. It would be very high, but it very depends on the doctrine of Americans' doctrine in the war. But it's not going to be something simple. It's going to be very painful. A lot of casualties are going to be very direct, immediate result of American strike. And I don't know. No one can even guarantee a regime change in Iran because Iran is a very big country. I would say that balkanizing the country would be the main target or main direct consequence of an attack on Iran, which would bring the whole region into more chaos and more geopolitical risk. But I have very little hope that a deal can be reached. I'm not saying it's not going to be reached. The chance is very little. It depends whether Iran is going to accept the very complex conditions of Americans. Iran for decades have emphasized that it's not going to give up uranium enrichment, let apart forever. You know, this is one of the conditions of Americans. The proxies of Iran are part of its ideologic and defense strategy in the region. And missile is the sole applicable tool of Iranian military in terms of creating level of deterrence against Israel and other actually forces in the region. So this is going to be very complex. This is going to be very out of reach, but maybe, I don't know.
Daniel, you mentioned in your earlier comments there one of the outcomes, if this all gets kinetic and conflict emerges in the region, we both share either side of the Gulf waters, that the Balkanization of Iran may be one of the outcomes. And many people may or may not be familiar with the fact that, Iran has very definitive, structure of its culture and society and ethnic groups and so forth, and geographies, and has that vulnerability in the way that we saw in the aftermath of the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, and still hasn't really recovered the sort of beautiful holistic fabric that Iraq used to be in all of its sort of combination of rich ancient cultures and peoples. In terms of Iran and sort of looking selfishly through the prism of the oil and gas industry, in the Balkanization structure, like we saw in Syria, for example, most of the hydrocarbons were located in the Kurdish region of Syria, which of course was under Kurdish control for most of the 15 years of the civil war, but has since returned to central government, but it had been relatively preserved. And I'm wondering, in the context of Iran, if one was to see Iran get sort of split up into pieces, is the oil and gas reserves in one piece that could be carved off and sort of taken away?
In terms of the geographic distribution of the locations of the major oil fields of Iran, most of Iranian oil is located in the southern part of the country. A lion's share of that is in one single province, in Khuzestan province, which is comparatively, let's say, half or 45% of the population are Arabs. And the rest of that are either from lower ethnicity or the people from central Iran who have migrated there for work and due to the jobs. So if Khuzestan province is separated, which I give it a very, very low chance in the case of any balkanization of the country. It used to be the case 50 years ago, 25 years ago, when we were in war with Iraq, and that was the intention of Iraqi invasion on Iran. But at the moment, there are not many significant or powerful, actually, separatist movements in Khuzestan. There are some, but they are not capable. In the case that any strong central government remains in Tehran, Khuzestan lower minority, actually, the ethnicity, they are part of the Iranic population. We have Iranic, actually, people, and we have non-Iranic peoples here within the borders of the ancient Persian Empire or Iran, contemporary Iran. For example, Arabs are non-Iranic peoples. The Turks and Azeris are non-Iranic people, but Kurds are Iranic people. But it does not necessarily mean that one wants to get separated and the other not. Kurds have some historical demand for actually establishing their own country within Iran, Turkey, Iraq, and Syria. So they are another story. But in Khuzestan, I don't believe that there is a high chance for separation. The second part, the second very oil-rich part of the country is the Persian Gulf. Persian Gulf, is a very, all the northern coast of the Persian Gulf is on Iranian borders. Limited part of that is in Khuzestan province. Most of that is in Bushehr and Hormuzgan province, which there is not very high chance for, actually nothing, no significant demand for separationism or balkanizing. So and major gas reserves of the country are located in the Persian Gulf. So in terms of gas, there is very little chance of any potential actually separation in the existing situation of the gas belonging to the country. In oil, I would say it has little chance, but more than the Persian Gulf itself. So, yes. But in other parts of the country, for example, in Kurdistan, in Baluchistan, which is also another possibility of, in any case, let's say, heavens forbid, but in any case that the country gets into the catastrophe of balkanization, I don't see any major oil reserve being at that risk if Khuzestan's situation in terms of demands for separation, which is very low at the moment, remains at the current level. But if a kind of, I call it, social history becomes dominant in the country, maybe Khuzestan's demand for separation would increase, but not at the moment. The major risk is now from Kurdistan. But please, John, let me add something about oil deliveries of Iran as well.
Okay.
Iran's oil deliveries to the market has remained about 1.5, 1.6 million barrels exports. But the deliveries from Iranian actually floating reserves to Chinese refiners have been declining very significantly. It's now about 1.2 million barrels or even less. So the war, despite actually the sentiments in the market that you should buy as much as you can or you should send as much oil as you can to the market, the Iranian deliveries to China have declined significantly. And that's a very negative signal for Iran because it appears that China or the whole network is not supporting Iran's very critical financial actually situation at the moment.
By reducing their purchasing of Iranian oil, they're basically signaling that, sorry, mate, you're on your own.
Exactly, and you know there are some high level officials, including the president, blaming China for not remaining on its obligations about Iran.
A few minutes left here. Of course, this is a Friday. I had the sense yesterday that it was sort of the last sort of stop, the last chance saloon, if you like. The meeting in Geneva did seem to come away with the Omanis saying that they've agreed to hold more meetings, and then the weekends have been a time in which we've seen things happen. Your thoughts of whether you take the Omanis to be accurate, that there's still legs perhaps in this discussion?
According to the official news we have received, Americans in the very beginning of the meetings and the talks rejected Iran's proposal. And they asked Iran to take a very hard decision, which is disrupting the whole enrichment infrastructure, not only closing them, shutting them down, but also disrupting the whole infrastructure Iran has built for several years. And that has cost the country hundreds of billions of dollars of losses. And at the same time, they have said that Iran should accept that there would be no sunset in its nuclear restrictions, which means that Iran would be the first and sole country in the whole world that has accepted no uranium or any radioactive material enrichment forever and ever without any censor. And in return, Iran will only receive limited sanctions relief, which can increase in accordance with Iran's. Can you hear me, friend?
Yeah, clearly, crystal.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I'm always thinking.
No, the line is the best it's ever been. So ironically, it's the most
I was just
clear.
thinking, they're just saying that okay, there would be limited sanctions relief, and Iran should accept this, and that would be little bit more and little coming more sanction reliefs according to Iran's compliance. So this is a translation of what they have asked Iran to accept is kind of surrender. And surrender would cost Iran very much in terms of its ideologic, actually, approach, ideologic expansionism, whatever we can call it. So Iran has asked them for a limited time to come back to the capital and discuss with the leaders, the Iranian actually envoy. But when they reached Iran, even before reaching Iran, in their TV interviews, they said that what you're hearing in the news is not what we talked in the talks with Americans. So this is very confusing. You know, we are not going to know what they have told each other. The Omani's foreign minister, Mr. Busaidi, is going to DC to talk with American officials in terms of actually trying to make a deal between Iran and the US. But in general, whatever comes out of, if there would be a deal, this is going to change the face of the whole region. You know, Iran cannot continue as what it used to do in the region. You know, Iran should come down. Iran should start working on its economy if there is any deal. But if Iran, by any chance, accepts to actually to give up its missile program, that would increase the risks of a Lebanese-like Israeli strikes on Iran, and this is going to make the situation more complex. So I think Iran would accept a nuclear deal, which would make Americans satisfied. But in terms of its defense capabilities, there would be no chance for negotiations. So it really depends on how much they are going to emphasize. I mean, Americans are going to emphasize on Iran's missile capabilities.
May I just follow up quickly as we're running over time? That is there any are people leaving Tehran? We saw in the war last June, people, you know, after the bomb started dropping, tried to leave Tehran. Is there any sort of that type of social reaction yet?
No, not at the moment, but huge capital flight is visible. You know, everybody who has a, let's say, big asset or comparatively big asset is trying to take his assets out of Iran. Many, you know, the demand for US dollar in the free market is very high. The demand for Tether and cryptocurrencies are very high. Many businesses are just delivering their assets to the UAE or other countries to protect their actually assets from any possible war, which no one really can understand what the scale of the war would be.